Hello and welcome back to the channel. In this video I'm going to be sharing with you how to cut a stylish princess bustier blouse. So if this is something you like, please hit on the subscribe button. Let's dive right into today's video. So first, here is my pattern. So I've marked all the basic measurements, which include shoulder to bust, under bust, waist and top length. So now I'll mark my shoulder divided by 2 and I'll come down by 1 inch. After I'm done doing that, I'm just going to go ahead to mark my basic neckline of 3 by 3 inches, and after marking that, I'm going to place my cuff drill and I'm going to be connecting my pattern. So after I'm done connecting my pattern, I'm going to connect back to that 1 inch we came down at the shoulder to draw the shoulder slope. Next is to find your armhole or chest line, which is your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. So whatever I have on the shoulder, I'll mark on this part also, just to have a straight line. Then I'll place my ruler and I will connect down to that point. After I'm done connecting, I'm just going to measure what I have from the bust down to the chest line or the armhole point, and I'll mark it on my pattern paper. This is also because I want to have a straight line at this point. So after that, I'll just go ahead and rule a line. So the next step you want to take is to divide what you have at the armhole into 2. By doing that, you're going to go ahead to fold your tape. So I'll go ahead and mark the midpoint and I'll come out by ½ inch. And at this point, I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 4, place my French cuff, connect from my bust circumference divided by 4 to the ½ inch I came in with and to the upper part of the shoulder. So after I'm done doing this, I'm just going to go ahead to use my marker to outline to make my pattern very visible for you to see. So next, I'm going to outline the rest of my pattern, and now I'll be marking my nipple to nipple or bust span divided by 2. So my nipple to nipple or bust span divided by 2 is 3.5 because my bust span is 7 inches or nipple to nipple is 7 inches. Divided by 2, I have 3.5. So I'll go ahead and mark all the way down. So after I'm done marking that, I'm just going to go ahead to also extend that line to the upper part. That is my nipple to nipple divided by 2 or my bust span divided by 2. So now I'll be marking a dart intake of ½ inch on this side and I'll mark 1.5 on the other side. So if you're plus size, you'll be marking 1 inch here and 2 inches on the other side. So here I'll mark ½ inch and mark 1.5 on this side. Now I'm going to go ahead to connect this way and connect to the lower part. On the other side, I'll also go ahead to connect from the top down to the lower part of this pattern. So I'm going to go ahead to divide my armhole again and I'm going to mark. So after marking that, I'm just going to connect from my bust point down to that line I have at the armhole this way. So after connecting, I'll go ahead and mark ½ inch from that point we have at the armhole and mark another ½ inch. Now I'm going to go ahead to connect this all the way down to the line we have at the midpoint or at the center. So this way we'll be having about 1 inch dart intake at the armhole. So that 1 inch, you're going to place your tape and you're going to replace it at this part of the armhole this way. So after that, you're just going to reconnect and you're going to create a new armhole for your pattern. So I'll go ahead and I'll outline my pattern to make it more visible for you to see. So after that, I'll go ahead and connect from my bust down to my under bust on this pattern this way, and on the other side I'm also going to outline it. Now I'm going to place my French curved or curved through this way, and I'm going to connect down to the under bust also just like I did for the other part, and I'll go ahead to connect. So this is what I have on this pattern. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'll mark out that 1 inch we extended out, that part of the armhole we extended out. So next is to insert your body measurements. I'm going to mark the bust circumference divided by 4. My bust circumference is 33 divided by 4. I have 8.3 inches. I'm going to mark, then replace that 1 inch that intake on top and add your sewing allowance. At the under bust, mark your under bust circumference divided by 4. Mine is 28 divided by 4. I have 7. Measure the that intake you have there, replace and add your sewing allowance. At the waist, you're going to mark your waist circumference divided by 4, and after you're done marking, you're going to measure the dart intake, replace it, and you're going to add your sewing allowance. After you're done inserting your measurement for the waistline, which is the waist circumference divided by 4, measuring the dart intake, replace and add your sewing allowance. At the lower part, you're going to add your hip circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace it and add your sewing allowance. So now I'm going to connect from the bust down to the under bust of my pattern. So I'm going to go ahead to connect the rest of my pattern from the bust down to the under bust to the waistline and down to the top length. I'm going to go ahead to connect to the lower part of my pattern, and this is what I have. So after I'm done doing this, I'm just going to use my marker to outline it to make it more visible for you to see. So when I was cutting out this pattern, actually, so I thought it had a cut on the waist, so I went ahead to outline the waist as we are going to cut it out. But after cutting it, I realized that there was no cut on the waistline of the pattern. So what we have there is just 2 separate pieces on both sides. So now I'm going to rule out the design we have on the lower part of this pattern. So from the lower part, I'll measure about 2 inches or 2.5, and I'll connect and draw out this shape, and then to draw out the rest, I'll blend up and also measure about 2 inches, connect again and draw out the curve, and then measure again and then reconnect to the back part, to the sides of the pattern. So after that, I added about ½ inch on the hip point or the top length and I extended, then used my marker to mark this out. So for this pattern now, we are supposed to just have 2 separate pieces, which is about the part I labeled A and the part the other side B. So you're supposed to cut it into 2 equal different pieces, just like you're sewing a princess dart bustier. So just like I said, when I was cutting this, I thought the blouse had a pattern, had a cut on the waistline. So when I was cutting mine, I went ahead to cut that. But if you're cutting yours, you do not need to cut out the waistline of your pattern. You're just going to leave it as 2 equal pieces. So now all you have to do is from this part, you're just going to take it all the way down straight. But when I was cutting mine, I felt there was a cut on the waistline, but after cutting that, I noticed that there was no waistline. So you can also add a cut on yours, or you can just take out the darts at the lower part and have 2 equal parts on the pattern. So for this, I've gone ahead to mark out my basic measurement. The only difference is that I have a zipper at the front part. Now I'm going to mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2, and I'm going to be ruling a straight line at that point. So after marking that, I'll place my ruler and I'm going to go ahead to connect all the way up. So I'm going to come down by 1 inch from my bust point, I'll mark 1/2 inch on my waistline, and after I'm done marking that, I'm going to connect it all the way down. So next, I'll be marking my body circumference divided by 4, my bust circumference divided by 4. I'll mark my sewing allowance. At the under bust, I'll mark the under bust circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace and add the sewing allowance. On the waistline, mark your waist circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, and you're going to add the sewing allowance. On the top length, go ahead to mark your hip circumference divided by 4 and add your sewing allowance. And also remember, at the lower part of the dress, we added about 1/2 inch to it, and also remember to add it to your pattern. You can go ahead and add it while you're adding your sewing allowance, or you can add it later. So I went ahead to give this pattern a cut at the waistline, just like I did for the front pattern. But the picture on the thumbnail doesn't have a cut on the waistline. At first I thought it had a cut, so I added that on the pattern. So remember, we went out by 1/2 inch or 1 inch by the waistline at the front. Remember also to do that. So you can leave your back waistline, top length, to be basic, or you can go ahead to recreate the same effect you have at the front pattern. So this is my pattern after I was done marking it out, and next we're going to take out the bulginess at the zipper. Go in by 1/2 inch, go ahead to extend this to the lower part, and also extend it to the upper part of the pattern this way. So after you're done doing this, you're just going to go ahead to cut out your pattern. So with this, we have come to the end of today's tutorial. After I'm done cutting the lower part of this pattern, I'll be merging it up as one piece.